In a modest neighborhood just outside Abuja, two women lived lives that appeared worlds apart but were once tightly intertwined. Ada and Chioma had grown up like sisters, laughing through childhood, hustling through university, and even standing as bridesmaids at each other's weddings. But time has a way of showing people's hearts, and what once seemed like love can sour into something vile. Chioma, a vibrant and hard-working mother of two, had always been admired by the community. Her tailoring business was thriving, her children polite and smart, and her husband, though often away for work, sent more than enough to keep their lives stable. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But envy does not feed on logic, it feeds on perception. Ada, once equally ambitious, had hit hard times. Her marriage had crumbled, her business failed, and resentment crept in. The more she watched Chioma's life flourish, the more bitterness gnawed at her spirit. She began to visit often, initially as a friend, then as a burden. Chioma, ever the kind soul, never complained. She shared meals, lent money, and even offered Ada a room when she claimed her landlord had thrown her out. At first, Ada stayed just for a week. Then a month. Then indefinitely. It began subtly. Ada would scold the children harshly when Chioma wasn't around, pinch their skin under the guise of discipline, and shame them for making noise. She would wear Chioma's clothes, sometimes before Chioma had even worn them herself. She began acting like the mistress of the house, dictating meals, giving orders, and making sly comments about how some people don't deserve what they have. Chioma, though growing uneasy, kept brushing off the red flags. She's just going through a lot, she'd tell herself. But children don't lie. Her eldest daughter, Zara, barely 9, once whispered to her, "Mummy, Auntie Ada says we are stupid goats and she will slap us into sense if we talk too much." Still, Chioma hesitated. She felt trapped between compassion and discomfort, loyalty and logic. Then came the night that changed everything. Chioma received a call from her husband. He had been in a minor accident in Kano and needed her to come immediately. She had no choice but to leave the children in Ada's care for 2 days. She left hurriedly, instructing Ada to take care of them like they were her own. But Ada wasn't their mother. She wasn't even a friend anymore. The moment Chioma left, the house turned cold. Not from the weather, but from the sharp, cutting air of malice. Ada stormed through the house like a lioness, tearing down Zora's drawings from the fridge, yelling that lazy children shouldn't have the luxury of such nonsense. She locked up the pantry and fed the children plain gari with no sugar. She forced them to kneel in gravel for hours for talking back. She slapped Zora for sneezing too loud. The woman Chioma had once called sister had become something else entirely. And just 2 days into Chioma's absence, something happened. Something the entire neighborhood would never forget. By the second evening, the once cheerful home had fallen into a tense and terrifying silence. Zora and her younger brother, Tochi, sat huddled together in the corner of their bedroom, afraid to speak, afraid to cry. Ada had seized complete control of the house like she had always believed it should have been hers. And now, with no one watching, she ruled with cruelty masked as authority. She tore down every picture of Chioma from the living room walls. She went through Chioma's wardrobe, selecting her best outfits to wear while pacing the hallway like a queen surveying her kingdom. "I should have been the one living like this," she muttered as she sipped wine from Chioma's glass, her eyes bloodshot with obsession. The children had been locked in their room for most of the day with only water and dry biscuits. When Zora knocked gently to ask if they could come out, Ada exploded. "Do you think this is your mother's house? Do you think you have rights here? You will learn your place, you ungrateful rats." She struck Zora across the face so hard the girl collapsed to the floor, dazed. Tochi screamed, and Ada whipped around. "You think you can shout in my house? Your mother spoilt you. But not anymore. That night, while the children cried themselves to sleep on the bare mattress, Ada went through Chioma's documents and personal belongings. She found Chioma's bank cards and attempted to guess the pins. She had grown bold, reckless even, convinced now that Chioma would never return. But something she didn't know was unraveling just a few streets away. Earlier that day, while buying vegetables, a neighbor named Mama F had seen Tochi through the window, signaling frantically with a sheet of paper. At first, she thought it was child's play. But something in her spirit told her to take a second look. The paper had writing on it. Scribbled in a child's hand were the words, "Help us. Auntie hurting us." Shocked, Mama F had immediately gone to another neighbor, Uncle Jude, who had a spare key to the house from when he used to help Chioma with small repairs. They decided to wait until evening to act, unsure of how serious the matter was, but unwilling to ignore it. Just past 8 p.m., Uncle Jude knocked on the door. Ada opened it with a forced smile, dressed in Chioma's lace wrapper. "Ah, Uncle Jude." "Long time," she greeted, but her tone was sharp, guarded. "Good evening. We heard some noises. Just checking that the children are okay." "They're fine. Sleeping. You know how children are." But as she spoke, Zara appeared behind her, her cheeks swollen, her eyes begging. She didn't say a word, she didn't need to. Uncle Jude's expression changed. "Madam, I need to speak to you outside." Ada hesitated. "Why?" "Because the police are on their way." Ada's smile faltered. She didn't know the neighbor had called them already. And what happened next would expose everything she had tried to bury. Ada froze at the doorway. The words, "the police are on their way," hit her like a thunderclap. Her mind scrambled for an explanation, a lie, an excuse, anything that could erase the guilt swelling in her chest. But Uncle Jude's eyes, fixed and unwavering, told her the lies wouldn't work this time. "You people don't know what I've been through." Ada snapped, her tone defensive, her face twitching with frustration. "Chioma just left these children like bags of rice, and I'm the one caring for them. They're rude, disrespectful, what do you expect?" But Zara stood silently behind her, bruised and trembling. Tochi peeped from the hallway, his shirt stained with dried tears. There was no saving Ada from the truth. Not anymore. Within minutes, a police patrol car pulled up to the gate. 2 officers stepped out, led by Mama F. She didn't wait for greetings. "Officer, those children are being abused in that house. That woman is not their mother." One of the officers turned to Ada. "Madam, we need to speak to you. Please come with us." "Why? Am I a criminal now for taking care of my best friend's children?" she shouted, but her voice lacked the strength it once carried. Her confidence was unraveling. "Chioma gave me permission." "Then you can explain everything at the station," the officer replied coolly. As the officers entered the home and saw the state of the children, the swollen face, the signs of neglect, the desperation, they didn't need further convincing. Zara was gently pulled aside and asked to speak. With the innocence only a child could carry, she described it all. The slaps. The hunger. The cruel words. The way Ada locked them in rooms and called them animals. Even as Ada sat in the police car, shouting about how the world was unfair to her, no one looked her way with sympathy. Her bitterness had consumed her, turned her into something unrecognizable, even to herself. Later that night, Chioma returned from Kono, exhausted but relieved that her husband's injuries were minor. But when she arrived and saw the crowd gathered at her gate, her heart dropped. She ran into the house, screaming her children's names. They rushed to her, crying into her arms. She looked up and saw Uncle Jude and Mama F, their expression somber but reassuring. "What happened?" she gasped. Uncle Jude simply said, "Your friend tried to take what was never hers." Tears spilled down Chioma's face as she clutched her children tighter. She had trusted Ada, loved her like a sister, but she had let a snake into her home. And it had nearly poisoned everything. That night, as she sat awake with her children curled beside her, Chioma realized how close she had come to losing them, not just physically, but emotionally. The betrayal was deep. But the strength of love, of truth, had cut through the darkness. And yet, there was still more to uncover. Because when the police searched Ada's belongings the next day, they found something that left everyone speechless. The sun had barely risen when a police officer returned to Chioma's home, holding a small evidence bag. Inside was a cheap, black diary with worn corners and a missing clasp. At first glance, it looked harmless, just another forgotten item tossed in with Ada's clothes. But its contents would crack open the full depth of her intentions. Chioma sat on the edge of her couch, her children close by. The officer placed the diary gently on the table. "We thought you should see this," he said. "It belonged to her. She kept it hidden behind your children's old school books." Chioma's hands trembled as she opened the first page. It was Ada's handwriting, careless, messy, and filled with venom. "Chioma thinks she's better than me. Always has. She parades around in her fancy clothes, her clean house, her perfect children. But she's nothing. Nothing. If I can't have a life like hers, I'll take hers instead." Chioma gasped, flipping through more pages. The entries grew darker, more erratic. "Once she leaves, I'll make this house mine. I'll make the children forget her. All I need is time. People already think I live here. She trusts me. The fool." Tears rolled down Chioma's cheeks. It wasn't just envy. It was obsession. Ada had been planning this. Manipulating every opportunity to edge closer to total control, not just of the house, but of her life, her identity, her family. One entry stood out like blood on white cloth. "If anything happens to her while traveling, no one would question me. I'm the only one close. The only one who truly knows the children." The room grew still. The officer leaned forward, voice low. "We're still reviewing everything, but it seems Ada may have been planning to harm you." Slowly. Quietly. This wasn't just abuse. It was a takeover. Chioma held her children tighter. What Ada had tried to do went beyond physical harm, it was psychological warfare. The house she had once filled with warmth had almost become a place of fear and control. Later that week, Ada was officially charged with child endangerment, theft, and unlawful possession of another person's property. But Chioma couldn't feel joy. Only grief, for a friendship lost, a trust destroyed, and the realization that sometimes evil doesn't come from strangers. It comes dressed as love, smiling from the shadows. The community was shaken. Parents became more cautious about who they let close to their children. People who once admired Ada now spoke of her with horror. Chioma, though scarred, stood stronger. She began therapy for her children, changed the locks, and repainted the walls. She didn't want the house to hold memories of screams and silence. She told her story during a community women's meeting. Not for pity, but for warning. Sometimes, she said, the enemy we fear is not outside. It's the one we call sister. And with that, she turned the final page of Ada's diary. Blank. Just like the life Ada had tried to steal, now erased by her own